We just hit record, which means we are officially on the record now. You can turn your cameras on if you want to say hi and wave to us. I didn't make it so you can unmute yourself because we're expecting about 700 people today or so. But we love thumbs up. We love stuff in the chat. Both Mark and I will pay attention to that today. Again, I'm Mike Montague, Global Head of Content at Sandler. I host the How to Succeed podcast. Highly recommend that one and other live events here for Sandler. And Mark McGraw has won the David H. Sandler Award, which is our highest honor. And he is a longtime Sandler trainer and award-winning trainer. And we have set a very low bar for ourselves today with giving a presentation about interesting presentations. So we still got some people coming in here. Looks like they're flooding in pretty fast. So while we're getting started, I wanted to invite you to our next live event, which is the Sandler Virtual Summit. Normally, we gather together in Orlando in March. It's not going to happen this year due to COVID. So we're going to have a virtual session, 8 live sessions from 9:30 to 2:30 Eastern on March 25th. If you go to sandler.com/summit, you can sign up and register for that completely free. And we'll have more of our award-winning presenters, best-selling authors, and much more presenting there on the 25th. Mark, I guess we could start there for you too. Any thoughts on the summit and the value of those? I know you've done 10 or so now, right?
10, yeah, indeed. Man, they are great experiences. And this will be the first virtual summit that we've run. But, by the way, if you've been to Summit, throw it out in the chat box. If you got something out of the Sandler Sales Summit, we've been doing these for years and years. They're just absolute winners in terms of takeaways and being able to meet and hang out with other people, which we will find a way to go make that happen as well, even though it's virtual. So best investment of all time ever. That's pretty nice. That's pretty nice.
All right, let's jump into it, Mark. We're talking about giving engaging virtual presentations today. And so I think the great place to start is, what does that look like? What is a good one? What is a bad one? So one of my favorite questions for everybody right now in the chat, what are your virtual meeting pet peeves? What are some of the things that you hate it when presenters do on virtual presentations, or even participants? I'll let you throw that out too, because if you're on the line, you might be the presenter a lot of times. But what are some of your top pet peeves? Oh, on mute for sure. Definitely. Melissa shouting me out already, talking too fast. That's one of mine, especially for our English as a second language viewers today. So I'll try and slow down. Great list coming here, Mark. What are some of yours? What do you think are common mistakes?
I think, I've seen a bunch of them over there. I think for sure eating and drinking on camera and all that stuff. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you think about the cameras right in front of you. You're just right here. That's right, Jim Marshall. It's, we're all right there. So I think that's one for me, for sure. And not in presentation mode. Yeah. By the way, be on the lookout.
Is funny. I see that a lot.
That is funny. One of the things I throw out to everybody with this, with respect to today, is you'll probably hear some things that you're like, okay, of course, yeah. But here's what I want you to be on the lookout for. Make a list and get a list going of the types of things that you could make just a few changes, just a small few changes in terms of what you're doing and how you're doing it. Because at the end of the day, it's a lot of those small incremental changes that make a huge difference. And by the way, you've got a nice list. Ask yourself, are you doing any of those things along in the chat box right this very minute? And if you are, just actively take notes and be aggressive note taker here as we go through this together. Mike?
Yeah, I think that's great. And then if you look at these example webinars on the screen, I could ask you, what are some differences that you see from meeting number 1 to number 2? And just think about it really quick, because what I found is over the last year, we've all been on hundreds of Zoom calls. We can tell pretty quick the difference between a good meeting and a bad meeting. So if you look at these two on the left, I see a lot more people with the camera on. They're all framed. They got the lights in front of them for the most part. The chat box is open on the right. We got people without chats on, other people engaged, looking down. Maybe they're taking notes or otherwise. and stuff, but we can tell instantly as human beings when somebody's listening to us and when we're not. And it becomes really frustrating when people are not. So I think you as a presenter really have to encourage the best possible environment, use the chats, encourage people to turn camera on and get the best possible communication. Mark, anything you would add off the bat on to-dos? We talked about the pet peeves, but I know we're going to share a whole bunch of them today, but just on the general setup and maybe upfront contracts for a good meeting?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think one thing, wherever you can, face the camera, look at the camera, make eye contact with the camera. This is in effect the other person's eyeballs that you're staring at. If you made eye contact, if I make eye contact.
Oh, that was my fault, Mark. I was letting people in from the waiting room. I muted you. So there we go. Rule number one, don't mute your presenter who's presenting. Look at that. We're going to learn all kinds of lessons today.
All good, all good. But you want to look at the lens and think of the lens as the person's eyeball themselves, and that's where you want to focus your time and attention. A rough rule of thumb is about 80+% of your time should be looking at the camera and at the camera lens. Now that's tough because a lot of times you want to read the nonverbals of the rest of the room, and that's important. But certainly anytime you want to make a point, okay, make sure that you're leaning in, make sure that you're looking right at the lens and that you're communicating that way, because you're certainly seeing it in this video, in the image across on the picture that's on the screen that Mike's got there.
All right. So we already demonstrated it once, Mark. Technology gone wrong. I think one of the things to put in the upfront contract is what happens if it doesn't work like you planned. You and I are used to doing some high wire acts here with hundreds of people on. We'll have thousands of people online at the summit. There is inevitably, especially when you're doing a tech demo, that's when something happens. I know across the country, people had power outages and other stuff too. So I think technology gone wrong is definitely something you want to plan for, right?
Yeah, and obviously there's the prep of the setup. We'll get into that in a minute. But Mike, one thing I think everybody can think about with this is that, in the world of Sandler, if you can anticipate something happening, by and large, what we want to diffuse the bomb. That's the principle that we talk about in Sandler is diffuse it, and you diffuse it by bringing it up. So, in our office, we watch a lot of demos that people do. We watch a lot of presentations of our clients, and inevitably, there's a lot of moving parts to doing an online presentation. And so, one of the best things you can do is actually tell people right up front, look, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer, there's a lot of moving parts on this end. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to take good care of our conversation together today. It's possible that something won't go quite as planned. I know it's crazy. It's been 2020 and 2021, right? And so with that, I appreciate your patience with it, and we'll get right at it. But go on and diffuse it, bring it up. And Mike, this is especially true for people that are, if you're running a demo and you've got software in front of you, maybe it's a custom demo that you're doing. You got multiple people on the line. You're dealing with the technology. You're trying to do all the thing. You can redline like a car, a car redlines. You can redline pretty easily. And one of the best ways to deal with that is just bring it up front and do a tremendous amount of preparation on the front end.
Well, that's a great point. And I would push one further, Mark. So some people might disagree with me. If you do, that's okay. Shout it out in the chat. But I feel like it's been 12 months now since we've all been quarantined and working remotely. When people say, like, oh, sorry, I can't turn my camera on, my internet's not very good. Well, you've had 12 months to call your provider and up your internet service, right? Pay a little bit more, get some faster bandwidth, or my computer's really slow. Well, get a new computer. I think, Mark, was it you that said one of your clients spent more on parking in 2019 than they did upgrading their technology to do virtual selling in 2020?
Yeah, that's a really good story, Mike. It's actually the opposite. The client had a bunch of people last year in 2019 traveling around the country. They went to all virtual presentations in 2020, as many people did. They invested a little bit of money into some technology. They actually spent less in it. They spent less in the technology than they did in parking in the previous years, just at the
Yeah.
airport. And the result was phenomenal in terms of the experience. Their experience actually got better, but just a little bit of investment in technology can go a tremendously long way.
Yeah, and then again, I see that too. There are going to be things that are outside your control. So sometimes the internet provider, somebody else in the neighborhood. There was a hacker attack with the podcast place where we host the podcast last week, and it was down for a couple of days. You're like, yeah, that stuff happens, but we can deal with those if they happen on a regular basis or they're freak accidents. But I think if they're chronic issues that you can solve, get in there and solve it.
And
So let's
Mike, a
talk
simple
about the
thing,
meeting.
let me just add one more thing if I can on that, Mike. A simple thing that everybody can go do is go get wired internet. You know, Wi-Fi internet can be faster than wired, but it's not as reliable. Good old Cat 5 goes a long way to what we're trying to get done. So I just throw that out again, in the hopes of everybody listening for what are a couple of things that you can do that would make a difference.
Sure. Now, I think that also goes to your setup. So both you and I have live backgrounds. This is actually here for me. I think it makes a big difference if you can to set up your room. And if you're going to be here for a while or selling regularly virtually, is to get in a place where you can have a regular, nice professional background and not worry about your hand disappearing or you holding up something that you can't show on screen and stuff with virtual backgrounds. Other thoughts on backgrounds and people getting creative with it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, on this one, how many of you had or saw inappropriate Zoom moments in 2020? You know, I hate to even go there. We had 4 inappropriate moments, and we were hoping very hard to keep it at 4 that we happened. So the virtual backgrounds, I mean, if you don't have control over your background, for heaven's sake, at this point, you know, get yourself either a green screen or go on the virtual background. And I see in the chat box, is a plain background okay? It is. It
Absolutely.
absolutely is. Some of the best images I've seen. My friend Jody Williamson has a phenomenal just a wall in front of it. I see Paige up there. That's a great background. What you want to do is avoid all the distractions of people and a lot of moving and movement. Here's a pet peeve: is if somebody grabs their laptop and walks to another place inside of the room, all of that motion. Jones over there shaking her head. So all of that motion really takes away from the attention. Um, One of our clients brought this up. It's up on the screen right here, and that's using virtual backgrounds. Now that background that you're looking at of me may look like a generic background. That background is actually one of the lobbies of one of my clients. And so when I was running a meeting with him, I used that background. You can go to Google Maps and pretty much download images of a client or of a location and customize your background. Sometimes we need to have a few things at the start of any presentation that we're going to do to be able to bond and connect with people. Another client is recently doing some prospecting. She used this technique. She's calling on the visitor center for the Charleston, South Carolina Visitor Center organization. And she made her background the visitor center for the building, sent them some prospecting messages, ran the meeting that way. Really nice way to add an extra touch and a nice bonding moment there on the front end.
Yeah, I think all of that is cool, and you can do for certain things and events, right? A funny virtual background to get somebody's attention. I know I did a prank where you can record yourself in Zoom in front of your live background, and then you make that your virtual background, and you can move away and look like you're still there because you recorded yourself in there as a video background. So there are fun things to get people's attention, and I would love to hear some Zoom mishap stories in the chat, by the way. I had a guy moon 50 people on a speed networking thing last week. His dog
On
started
purpose?
fighting. He turned around to stop the dogs from fighting while he was giving his 30-second commercial, bent over and his sweatpants went halfway down and he entirely mooned the whole group. So love those stories. Makes
Oh
me
my gosh, I'm seeing some of
laugh every
these.
time. Yeah, those are
So
great. Thank you for
so
sharing.
super quick, Mike. We had one where someone was dressing in the background, way off in the distance. The wife was not too happy about that. He covered up the camera quick. Wife comes over and lays into him for having the camera
Still
on,
unmuted.
and it wasn't muted, so we got to hear that side of it too. So it was two mishaps all wrapped up in one. So we just got to be super careful of these things and be conscious and cognizant of it, because really your background is sending a message in terms of your professionalism as to what you've got going on. So without a
So
doubt.
here's a quick checklist. I see Annie throwing stuff out already. Yes, dress entirely appropriately. You never know when somebody's going to bump your camera over, or you drop the laptop, or something else happens. Those are good ways to present. But here's some quick tips. I think present yourself professionally. We talked about the background and your cameras. Make sure the lighting's in front of you. Go ahead and test your microphone and volume and screen sharing, and you can record yourself in whatever you're doing ahead of time, then listen back to it. Does it sound good? Is there too much of an echo, weird background noise? Lighting and camera in front of you and above your eyes helps. So everybody looks sexier with the camera at eye level or above. That's why everybody holds the camera way up when you take a selfie, right? So the laptop in your lap shooting up your nose is not going to make anybody look good. Be able to just do basic stuff like mute and share your screen and send a calendar invite with the appropriate link and make sure people can get in there, or have a backup in case that doesn't work. I think those are all quick tips for me. What about you, Mark?
So a couple of them on my side for sure. I was doing a session the other day, and somebody had the laptop is down here. You're staring up their nostrils. It wasn't a good look. I'm just being honest, okay? And I think most of us have gotten past those types of things. I think audio is a big thing that people miss. I mean, if you think about, we talk all the time about 38% of your message when you see somebody actually comes from tonality. And that's a big number. And I see in the chat box somebody commented that my mic sounds nice. Thank you for that compliment. Um, there's all kinds of mics out there. Some people say that headsets aren't such a good look. I'm a big fan of having a boom mic. If somebody's got a better thing out there, I'm all for it. But I'm a big fan of having that. Although there's other things that work well, but I think that makes a huge difference. Here's a test you can use with somebody that you know. Ask them this question when you're on a Zoom call with them. Scale from 1 to 10, 10 being you and I are sitting together beside each other physically in the same room. How does my audio sound? And be honest with me. And if you get anything less than a 9, go fix it. Okay? There's just too much at stake here. Just go get it fixed, okay? And you can get $20 mics that actually sound pretty good. Again, the boom mics tend to operate a little bit better, but that's definitely something I'd have everybody work on.
Yeah, audio's first. So the stats show that people will put up with bad video if the audio is clear, but if there's popping and bad audio, it overwhelms our ears. And it's there's a term called misophonia. That's the hatred of sounds, that, like nails on a chalkboard or clicking pens when you're trying to concentrate. Pops and background echoes in audio will do that too. And so I was on the radio, so I have the radio boom where I can make it closer or further away from me here. But it's a $100 microphone and a $150 webcam, I think. So you're talking about less than $500 to get stuff that make you look good and sound good. And then a little bit of lighting and arranging your room, especially if you're going to be in the same location for a while, is time well spent. And I saw lots of other good questions there too. So I think I recommend using the computer audio and not the desk phone. Most of the time, unless you know that you have bad internet, and keep your phone as a backup. So it works really great to have that number handy and know what happens just in case something goes wrong. You can continue the meeting from your phone. So cell phone makes a great backup for your presentation and for audio. Now, when designing slides and designing an interesting presentation, one of the cool things I like to think about is think about creating a comic strip and telling an interesting story. So a common mistake I see from salespeople and presenters of all kinds is they put way too much information into their PowerPoint, and then we don't even need you. We could just read the PowerPoint. Email me that PowerPoint and I'll skip the meeting. How's that sound? Because
By the way, Mike, in the chat box, who's guilty of that? Let's have some honest answers right there. Please continue, Mike. But let's have some honesty out there for folks with too much on the slides.
Yeah, a couple of them on there too. Now, you've seen a couple of different slides. So we tried to really demonstrate today a whole bunch of uh, different types of slides that you could show. So I'll point out some other differences as we go forward. But the presentation, like a comic strip, you just need the headline. The comic strip doesn't give you the whole novel story, right? It doesn't give you all the background information on the characters and the building, all that. You can do that. You can add the color to it. The comic strip just tells you enough that you know where the story is going, and you get to fill in creatively what the rest of that is. So, for example, on my screen, stormtroopers in the Star Wars galaxy, there are billions of them, right? Star Wars, not very creative, not very interesting by themselves. A circus is creative, but by itself, we've all seen a circus, and sometimes they're kind of lame. We've seen them before. But have you ever seen a stormtrooper circus? So that becomes creative and unique and something nobody's ever seen before. And it's more compelling when you combine elements and make something kind of magical and more interesting for your audience.
Yeah,
Now,
big fan of this. I was guilty of
yeah.
this. This image as well, I think, is a good image for everybody to have as well, Mike. Um, just in keeping things simple. By the way, somebody in the chat box, Mike, mentioned a book that I had forgotten about, but it's a few years old. Presentation Zen, Zen. Excellent book on this concept right here. I see some folks taking some notes. It's a really good book as far as getting that message across. I've found too, Mike, that jumping out on Google, getting an image of something that's a high quality image like you see up on the screen, right clicking, saving it. Of course, copyrights, everything has to be clean and all of that. There's plenty of tools out there that'll help you get copyright, appropriate content. But a lot of times we're better off with one image than we are 100 words. And without a doubt, I'm a big believer of that philosophy that you've got up on the screen right now.
Yeah, and I think the big thing is to have use big text. So I think the rule is 20 points larger than the average age of your attendees. So if we say the average age of the people on the call right now are 40, we need a 60 point font for everybody.
That one hit a home a little too much for me, Mike. But that's
There you go. Got you on that one.
yeah,
But
that one
remember,
hurt.
people might be watching from their cell phone, right? So if the screen is this big, you can't put a ton of information on there and still have people able to read it. I love what you said too. Images can invoke emotion and remind you to tell stories and make interesting things. Lots of great books, people shouting out in the chat. You can Google stuff. I love the shout outs to TED Talks too. TED Talks are interesting. They hardly ever even show images in TED Talks, unless they're helping the story, unless they're helping to tell the story, right? It's a graph or it's a demonstration or an image that you need to see. And there's lots of tools you can do. Canva.com is a great website. Lots of different stock photo sites that can help you build interesting presentations or find templates that you can do there. Now, that brings me to our next one, which is engaging your audience in a discussion. So one of the reasons we want to take the information out of the PowerPoint is because we have a Sandler rule that people don't argue with their own data. If I can get the participant to tell me the answer rather than read it on the slide, they will agree with it much more, and they will remember 90% more of what they say than what you say. So I love all of you shouting out in the chats and giving the tips, because you're adding way more information. 700 of you right now can type information in the chat, but only one of us can talk at a time. So
Yeah.
think how much more valuable it is when we get a discussion and participation from multiple people. Mark, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm 100% in agreement with that. I think it's a great point that a lot, some people view video as being not as good as being in the room. I think you got to check your mindset and say, look, how can it be better? And that's one of the ways Mike just brought up. How can it be better? And one way is that you can get, in this case, 600-700 people's comments flowing. Whereas if we had everybody together in a room, 600 or 700 people, there's no way we would get everybody's ideas and thoughts. And so ask yourself, when you do present, how do you leverage that? How do you pull that in? And that can be through normal things like polls, and things like that. They're all good. There's a tool out there called Miro Board we've been using more and more. I'll put it in the chat box, but it's basically a way for people to put post-it notes and collaborate up on a whiteboard, or to be able to draw and to create things together. And yeah, I see a number of people saying, they love Miro, Miro, as a tool. By the way, none of these things that we're bringing up, we're not sponsored by any of them. We get nothing out of
Right.
it. It's just all things that we've used over time that seem to work. Okay.
And then talk about from a sales perspective, Mark, too. I know both of us can speak to this, but the whole point of a sales call is to have a discussion. If it was going to be a presentation, we could have just recorded it in a tool like Vidyard and sent over the recorded presentation. So if we're going to get multiple people live at the same time, synchronously, the whole point is to have a discussion and to get as much information as we give, right?
Yeah, I mean that's hugely important. You got to decide what's your goal of any presentation. I think personally, Mike, I think too many people have watched too many episodes of Shark Tank. Okay, I think Shark Tank has to blame for this, and here's what I mean by that. In Shark Tank, and by the way, our folks over in the UK, there's a variation, and in the EU, there's a variation of this. Maybe you guys can chat out what it is. I think that's where it kind of got started over there, as most good things, and
Yeah,
and
Dragon's Den.
that's what it was. That's what it was. But here's what happens. They come up in front of the investors, somebody that's got a creative idea for something, and they come in front of the investors and they pitch it. And now what ends up happening is anytime we go to do a presentation, we think that that's how it's supposed to be done, which is BS, frankly. Okay. A good presentation is engaging, it's back and forth, there's discussion. Okay. And it's dynamic. To your point, otherwise you just show them a YouTube video, which is ridiculous. And so I think Shark Tank, we got to get away from that more and more. And frankly, I think with video, it's become easier and easier to get away with it, and to get away from that sort of one-sided, let me pitch you something. It's just bad form.
Yeah, it's generally not. Now there are times in our Sandler fulfillment step, right, where you do a presentation, but even then we want to customize it into a discussion around their pains and the solutions that we have to those problems. And then we're still not even then typically doing any type of extended talking to them. So this is a weird situation because we can't exactly with 700 people demo what we're talking about here. But this is not a sales call, right? This is a marketing activity for us. In a sales call, we would definitely not do it this way. So just take that point and think about it, and continue with the talk time thought, Mark.
And I'm going to throw this out real quick. I mean, I'm loving watching the chat box go over here on the side, and it's just so many good things. Uh, so I just think that that's absolutely wonderful. So I love the fact that you guys are doing that.
And then we talked here about watching your talk time, but there are tools like Gong where you can record meetings. So and I love what you said earlier, Mark. A lot of people are finding virtual meetings are better than face-to-face ones, especially now if you have to wear a mask during a face-to-face meeting. Online, at least you can see their facial reactions and expressions and see the bottom half
Yeah.
of their face. But you can also record and then watch talk times and see where people mentioned different things in the sales call or what pain points came up when you talked about budget and price, and debrief them with coaches. There's a lot of other benefits to virtual meetings.
Yeah, one thing, Mike, that we've noticed, and this is sort of a different thing that's taken place, is that when you have a video and you're presenting virtually, you see a lot more of the person in the screen. And so you ask yourself sometimes, okay, how do you get people to talk more and to engage more? Here's where you want to look, right here. Look between the eyes, right here. This part of everyone's face tells you so much. If somebody wants to ask a question such that you can change the ratio and get them to speak more, watch my eyes right here. Those are the reactions, the nonverbals. You're going to pick up on those things. And my counsel is that anytime you see someone who wants to ask a question and you're in the middle of a sentence, stop, shut up, don't say another word, and turn the mic back over to them to get them to talk. And I saw in the chat box earlier, we've got to get the ratio that Sandler coaches and say 70% of the time your prospect should be doing the talking, 30% you should be. Now, that can change in the format. In this format, if we have you do the talking 70% of the time, it's going to be quiet for a lot of this session. So you got to adapt to the circumstance as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So and I got one more thing I'd throw out, but go ahead, Mike. You were going to say?
No, I was gonna move along. You finish that one up, and then we'll talk about the next one.
Let me throw one more thing out if I can. I know we're watching the clock here too. There's so many things to talk about with this. One of the things that I think we can do as we do demonstrations and we do demos or presentations, a lot of us are doing sort of the same either demo or presentation over and over, whether it's a capabilities presentation or it's a product service or something that you're working on. What I'd ask you to do is to go back and look at, like, let's say a 30 or a 60-minute long presentation that you're giving and break it into chunks. So for example, you've got the bonding chit chat at the beginning, and you've got maybe your upfront contract and your pain and all the stuff that you've got. And at some point, you're going to present some stuff. You're going to go through some slides and figure out on a pie chart what that is today as a percentage of time in each one of those chunks. And then say to yourself, what do you think it should be going forward? Because here's what we find with this one, especially in presentations, is that a lot of times people are trying to get through all the slides, they're trying to get through the entire demo, and they're not leaving enough time for other conversation to take place. And so by pie charting what it is today and what you'd like it to be, you got a better chance of hitting that target going forward. Just food for thought for everybody.
I love that. They asked what was, do you know the brand name of your microphone?
Yeah, I put it in the chat box. So it's a Sennheiser MB Pro 2.
All right, there you go. And then I saw a bunch of other things about putting a post-it, below your camera that says "look here" or "smile." I think telling your face to smile is a big thing you have to remember, especially if you're thinking really hard and you're in a sales call or a meeting, all focused. But the other thing you said there, Mark, I love is blocking out those chunks and knowing whether you're ahead or behind. So we're at the halfway point here, and I know that we're halfway through our slides, so we're doing good, and we won't have to speed up and cram them all in here at the end, but you can paste that stuff. And then that reminded me of with these sticky notes is that the other benefit of giving a virtual presentation is you can put a lot more stuff in front of you than you can in a live call. So you can have all of your notes. You can pull up the person's personality profile in Crystal on LinkedIn. You can have their whole background and bio open. Yeah, you got your notes in front of me. I got all kinds of sticky notes here on Talk Tracks, and I have the presenter view of the presentation. And I'm looking at the waiting room. We have all kinds of other inputs and information that if we don't distract ourselves can be really beneficial virtually. And so I guess that'd be my other point is shut down anything else like email or other things that would distract you from giving a great presentation.
Mike, I know we got a lot of Sandler folks on the call. Have the pain funnel there. Have your upfront contract on the side. Put those things in post-it notes. I saw some people said, smile up on the screen, and those are good things to go do. I mean, life is an open book test, folks. Cheat. I mean, it's right in front of us right now. Okay, we can do these things, so let's take advantage of it.
All right, now this is a slide that we stole. That is not me in drag. That is one of our other Sandler trainers. But the idea here is take a couple of minutes and think about a way that you could make your meeting more interesting. How could you put some boom in your Zoom? How could you just take 5 minutes and think, is there a poll that I could do with this person? Or I saw somebody ask, what do you do when people are tuning out? Well, there's lots of things we could do. I think, changing the circumstance, changing the screen, turning your video off changes what they're seeing. And they go, whoa, what happened? Well, if everybody else turned their video off, maybe I do as well, even though I recommend having it on. But there are lots of different things that you can do to change stuff up, right? So that you can just make it more interesting. You can get control back when you lose it, or you can wake them up and break their patterns. And they're saying, oh, this meeting is not like every other meeting that I've ever been in before. So I would love to hear, on the chat, Kahoot polls are great. You can do quiz games. Jackbox has a really cool one where you can have them draw sayings if you're doing any type of training or internal meeting. All great stuff. These are all
Yeah, that's
just
great.
in PowerPoint, Mike.
I'm a fan of whenever if you need a minute, like I'm gonna do this right now. I'm gonna put in the chat box. Um, let's see. There we go. There's a YouTube video, so you can pop over and check a 15-second YouTube video out. For IP licensing copyright stuff, we couldn't play the video, but I can throw over in the chat box. You guys can go watch a trust fall fail, which is a funny little moment. Hopefully, I put the right video link in there. But you can mix things up and have people. I'm waiting for reactions for anybody that's. Yep, I see a couple right there. A couple of people smiling and laughing as they've gone on to go see some of the other videos. Big believer when you use videos in sessions, like we just did right there. Really helps mix things up and helps bring some more creativity to the session.
Yeah, and Kurt mentioned pre-meetings too. So we were playing the fun music ahead of time. I did that for an internal meeting with a client this week. I was playing Mr. Roboto by Styx as people came into the meeting, and it was a totally different start to any other meeting we had that week. Everybody was laughing and talking about their high school parties and stuff, and throwing back. I think those are great things to just break the normal patterns of, hey, we're on another Zoom. All right, who's starting? You're on mute, Mark. Like they're just, you're not this time. But like those are the boring ways that we start meetings, and we just want to take a second before the meeting to do a little pre-call plan and think about how can I add a little magic to this. Now, the other thing I think when thinking about your content is, how can we make sense of complicated information? I see far too many salespeople make the mistake of, like what they did with their slides, overcomplicating the pitch and try to oversell versus simplifying and solving problems in your virtual meeting. So sometimes we want to sound smart. Sometimes we want to increase the added value or the perceived ROI of our product. And we start adding way more information or making things overcomplicated, when what we want to do is simplify the decision. So if I said, Mark, I need you to choose between A and B, you can probably do that and weigh the answers. Do you want to make more money and help your sales team hit their revenue targets? Yeah, of course I do. Do you want to have 1,000 different topics and work through this spreadsheet with me on which ones we should cover in those sales trainings? No, that just slows it down and it confuses people who are not used to living in your world. What are your thoughts, Mark?
I'm a big fan of what you just described. We refer to them as multiple choice questions. And so if you think about, there's like everybody knows about open-ended questions. There's closed-ended questions, yes, no. There's another variety inside of here too called multiple choice, okay, or Chinese menu, sometimes it's referred to as. And so you get people to choose between A, B, and C. Which do you think makes the most sense? Dave Mattson, the CEO of Sandler, has a wonderful phrase, and he says, people love to edit, but hate to create. And so if you give someone something that they can edit or that they can choose from, they feel much more comfortable than if you ask them a blank open-ended question. So knowing when to use those different types of tools to be able to help you make sense of complicated information, I just think it helps keep things rolling in the right way.
Yeah, and there's lots of easy ways to do polls in Zoom or something too. So you all have the reaction buttons. So if you were, I think, if you were rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, give me a thumbs up. If you were rooting for Tampa Bay, use the clap icon real quick, and let's just see what we got there.
And if you're in the EU and you have no idea who those are, that's okay too. I'm sure there's a different hand symbol you can use.
Yes, if you're a fan of actual football, then yeah, use the different one. So there you go. Like different ways you could do it in the meeting, right? Think about everybody give me a thumbs up, and you can just show thumbs up on the camera. Everybody give me a flat hand sign like this if you're not sure or you want me to move on, right? There's lots of different ways that we can do and get better interaction from people there. Now, this is one of my favorite slides, Mark. It's the no slide. So David Sandler had the rule. Somebody put it in the chat earlier. You win a prize. We'll have to decide what that prize is, but the best presentation you will ever see, or the prospect will ever see, you will never give. I said that backwards. The best sales presentation you will ever give, the prospect will never see. So stop sharing your screen. Just turn it off. If you hit B while you're presenting and you're clicked on the PowerPoint, it goes to a black screen. So in PowerPoint, B will just black out your slide. Take it down and don't distract people with information that they don't need if you want to encourage a greater discussion.
Yeah, or for sure, just even stop sharing the screen for a minute if you needed to, and pop back out. Whatever you can do to change the image that people are looking at about every 20 seconds or so, you're better off. If you can get them to take control of the screen too during demos and presentations, we've seen that be effective as well to get them involved. So if you're doing a software demo as an example, if you can have them run some of the reports and some of the screens right from there, as long as you're doing it in a somewhat controlled way, it gets them to have ownership of it. And then you're not having to go through slides and things like that.
I see
Oh,
a
I
lot of
see.
technical demos do that backwards, Mark, where if you're doing the demo and you're doing the clicking, they're not experiencing it. They could have watched the recording. If you have them share their screen and you tell them where to click so that they do the demo, it's way more powerful.
Absolutely. And you think, well, how in the world do you do that? Or what are you going to do to have somebody experience that over a virtual presentation? Give them control of the software. Let them go through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And then
Susan
they
asked
may
about
fumble a little bit, but okay.
I'm going to give you control, Mark, because the next slide is yours. But Susan asked about the music. I just share my screen with sound, and then you can open up Spotify or Amazon Music or anything, and then just play music. So when you click share your screen in Zoom, there's an option in the lower left that says share computer sound, and it will let you do that.
So with any luck here, since Mike and I are co-hosting, I just took over control of the screen. I'm assuming you guys can see that now that that's taken over. And I saw just in the chat box somebody read our minds with us, and let's see who it is. It's Mates, M-A-T-Z, and Susan, I think Jose as well.
Jose shouted out, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a great tool right here. Is just use a pen and a whiteboard, and I can write up on the screen right here. And the more you can engage and have things like that, so that's just PowerPoint, and using in this case it's a Lenovo Yoga laptop, but it brings people over and gets them involved. We call that whiteboarding, and it's just a really simple, easy tool. In fact, Mike, I gotta share this story with everybody. I just got closed by someone the other day. Best sales call I've seen in 10 years. Okay, you guys ready for this?
For sure.
She's a bookkeeper. Okay? A bookkeeper, best sales call I've seen in 10 years. So our bookkeeper, who we've had for 7 years, is retired. She just retired. So I have to go on the search to find a new bookkeeper. So I talk to X, Y, and Z, and I get this last person, Joan, on the line. And here's what she does: she pulls up, she shares screen, and she has a list of questions in Word up that she wants to ask me about getting started and what's important to me and all this stuff. She's asking me the questions. While she's asking me the questions, she's typing in the answers into the document. Now, I've been doing this for probably 15 years. You're seeing on the background some of the whiteboards that I've done over the years. To be on the receiving side of that and having somebody hear and understand what's important to me, when we were done, I was done, folks. It was just beautiful what she did. There's something magical about either handwriting or typing in both parties' thoughts and getting it so that you're literally on the same page together. And you go back and you look at the document, and it's mind-blowing how powerful it is that they've heard and understood what you're after. And that was the best sales call that I've seen in probably 10 years, and she ran it perfectly.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's two easy ways to do that. I type them and annotating on the screen right now. So you can, if you're not sure about your handwriting or you don't have a nice stylus that works, you can just pull up the annotate tool and type it in. So I typed
Yeah.
these things here while Mark was talking. I can clear them out and go to the next slide, but also the collaborative document. So I've seen it work really well, Mark, where you share that as a Word 365 document or a Google Doc where you can both click into it and type and take notes. And when you're doing a summary, especially for like team selling or enterprise accounts, and you can fire that shared document out to other people that weren't there in the meeting, or you've both taken notes together, now you know that you got it right.
That's
You
it.
didn't have happy ears. They agreed with what you put down as the notes because they saw it on the screen and they had a chance to argue with
And,
you or
and,
correct it, right?
and Mike, what happens when you do this is people will say, "Hey, make sure you write this down." I mean, they're
Yeah.
and they're totally involved. It's absolutely one of the single best. And I try not to overemphasize things, but it's to me one of the single best selling tools that I've run across is to actually share the image. When we were all face to face and together in the same room, you'd write it down or go to a whiteboard and just put the notes down there. And it's so powerful. I see in the notes, Mike, somebody said, if your handwriting is legible, look,
Right.
it needs to be legible, but it's interesting. As long as they can read it somewhat, the fact that you've seen this movie together and you've had this experience, it's pretty powerful on its own. And if you need to, by all means, type it out. That's what she did. And the other chat that came across, yes, she did get the business. I did hire her.
Yeah. No, that's so great. I saw some other questions there too. Yes, if you're sharing music or YouTube things, you want to make sure that they are you have copyrights to do so. If you're using it in a commercial manner for marketing purposes, if it's a private internal meeting or anything, you typically don't need to do that. But there are lots of stock music, stock video sites, and things that you can do if you do need music or interesting walk-on music for a public presentation or something you're charging a ticket price to attend. um, I also saw collaborative documents. There's a ton of those. So Dropbox Paper, Evernote, Office 365, Google Docs, all of them allow you to share and collaborate on a shared document at the same time, which is really cool. Mark and I even worked on this presentation together. So he had it up on his screen. I have it up on mine in Office 365, and he can make changes to the PowerPoint while we're going if he wants. In Google Slides, you can share the slideshow and give presentation controls to multiple people so that if you're having 4 presenters in one presentation, you can all share the same Google presentation and have different people click the slides forward. That's helpful as well. I think I hit most of the questions, but we are coming in to our final approach, Mark. Do you want to help me land the plane?
Yeah. So, okay. So again, probably in the last 12 months, I've probably watched 100 presentations, maybe 150 presentations slash demos. And these take a considerable amount of time. And so I just wanted to share this with everybody. Here is a consistent, I don't know, optimization opportunity. How about that? How about mistake? We'll go with that. Here it is. Very often, if somebody's got a 60-minute meeting, they get right up to 2 minutes because they just want to share everything on the slide deck. They just want to get it all out. And here's what's happening. They're going like in an airplane, they're going from 30,000 feet to tarmac in about 2 minutes. Now, if that happens in the real world, it's an unpleasant experience. Okay. And so here's the coaching that I've been providing around that is you got to think about landing the plane. Here's what I mean by this. The flight attendant gets on the PA system and they say, hey, we're about to land. We're going to need to fasten our seatbelts and we'll be about 12 minutes before we hit the runway and we land and all that. And here's what I need you to do. We need to be thinking about that as well as we do demos and presentations and we do things like that so that we can save the time to make sure that we have clear next steps together. Okay, that we've saved time to have the business conversation about what's going on. Okay, using things like let's pretend that so and so agrees with this, how are we going to move forward, and all of the different tools that we have for upfront contracts. You can't do that if you only have 30 seconds left, because here's what happens. Somebody on their end says, well, email me a couple of dates that we can get back together again, and the chase starts. Okay, as opposed to if we save a little bit of time at the end, we can start to land the plane, signal to them and let them know, hey, we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm sure we're going to have to wrap this up. Okay. And now all of a sudden we get to a point where we can start to really truly get dates and times on calendars, decide what's going to happen next and how we're going to move forward. And it's not an abrupt end to the meeting.
Yeah, I would just second that and say that the whole point of meetings is generally to get some sort of consensus and decision, right? So we don't want to save that for the last 2 minutes while people are dropping, and sometimes people leave early, and you're like, oh, that one person we needed to sign off left early and didn't say anything, and we miss our chance, right? So I love that telegraphing that we only have so much time left. We're going to start landing the plane, getting people used to, we're going to have to make a decision here in the next 5 minutes about whether we move forward or not. And no's okay. But if we are going to move forward, what does that look like? And what should the next steps be? And we start talking about all of these things. And that takes me to my last point, which is always end with a call to action. Always end every marketing message or something, or even every email message with a question so that you get a response back, right? That you keep the conversation going. There should be some outcome, some decision, some action taken from the meeting. Otherwise, it didn't need to be a meeting. It should have been a memo or something, right? If they're not responding, if they're not taking an action or deciding on something, what was the point of getting together? So we have a call to action for you here, and then we have time for Q&A. So I see one hand still raised, but if you want to, we can try and unmute you, or you can just type them in the chat. And we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. But our next event that is live is on March 25th from 9:30 to 2:30 p.m. Sandler.com/summit. Sandler.com/summit. You can register for that. It's completely free. We're going to do 8 live sessions and from just some of the best content. We got virtual selling 2.0 from Jody Williamson in Chicago, top best practices we've collected from around the world in the last 12 months that we want to share with you. It's completely free. So it's 9:30 Eastern, which we'll take breaks for lunch or dinner for people in the UK. And it'll be early happy hour for some as well, but 9:30 to 2:30 Eastern, March 25th, completely free to join. Click on that link right now. I didn't see any questions. Are there any questions that we missed? Joan, you're ready there. I can ask you to unmute if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Great. Hi, thank you very much. This was very informative. Hopefully this is an easy question. How is it that I'm able to see 30 people as well as the PowerPoint presentation on the side? What is this, a special tool, something you're paying extra for?
Just Zoom does that. So it's pretty standard with all of the Zoom features. And if we didn't do that, I forgot to say at the beginning, but in the upper right, you'll see view, and you can do just a speaker view if you want to see the speaker larger, or you can do the gallery view where you want to see more people. And then there's multiple pages. So if you click the arrow button in there in the middle, Joan, you'll see several more pages of people on here as well. But then there's a bar in between those that you can drag back and forth. So it's a great tip for people presenting. We should have done this at the beginning. You can make that presentation larger or smaller based on whether you want to see the people larger or the presentation larger. If you find that little bar in between those two.
I don't see it, but I'll look for
Thanks
it.
for that.
Yeah, if you play
hover
around
over.
with those settings, at least on Zoom in the upper right-hand corner. Personally, I'm a big fan of either 2 monitors or wide monitors. I'm staring at a 37-inch monitor. It's about this wide. Okay, looks like the front of a cockpit of an airplane. And I've got basically 3 screens in front of me, 4 if I include my laptop. The camera's set right over the monitor. Okay, and so generally when I'm looking at your faces, I'm also looking at the camera lens as well.
Yep, I use dual screens, and I think somebody else asked, what if you don't like looking at the camera? How do you look at the camera and the face at the same time? I try to shrink my screen or put the person who's talking right below the camera, and then that way I can just look at them and I can keep the focus on there. But depending on how your setup is, you might need to tweak that a little bit.
So, and here's $1 million idea for somebody. So help me. Somebody's going to come out with a camera that actually is either in the monitor or is so small that it sits on strings inside of it, so that I can be staring at you and the camera is going to be so small, it's going to be right on there. And that's going to happen. I don't have the time to go do it. So that one's on
If you
me.
do a lot of presentations, they do exist. So some phones have cameras that are in the middle of the screen, but for computers and other cameras, it's basically a teleprompter setup.
Yeah,
So if you
I could
put
see that.
an iPad with a teleprompter, you can put the people's face right over the camera lens through a one-way mirror. Saw a good question for you, Mark, from Ryan here. He said, if you're really good at live presenting, what's the biggest tweak you should make for virtual presenting?
The I would say the number one tweak, by the way, great question. Anytime you take like, that's a great question. My answer to that is check your mindset. Okay. And that's an unusual answer to that, because here's what I've seen. I've seen people that are really great at presenting live, and they say, oh God, I got to do this thing, and I've got to do it virtually, and it's never as good. And I don't like this. And I don't. Look, you're setting yourself up for failure if that's where your mindset is. I wholeheartedly believe that doing virtual, interactive, live, if you will, events can be as or more impactful than being together in a room. That's my belief. May or may not be true, but that's my belief, and I'm sticking to it. So the first thing I would say is change your belief. The second thing I would say is just get a good setup that's consistent, that you can walk up to and just fire away. The confidence goes a long way.
Yeah, it's
Those
great.
would be
I
two.
saw a lot of people mention standing up. I'm standing up today. Mark has done a lot of presentations standing up as well, but you got a couple of different looks. I've seen him do that. It does help for me when I feel like I'm on, and if I'm giving a presentation. Sometimes if you have a whole long day of a bunch of meetings, it's not necessarily as easy to stand the whole time, but stools and other stuff work as well.
I'm a big fan of standing up. I happen to be sitting down today only because we just in the last few days moved to a new office building, to a new building. We bought our own office, and everything is in flux as far as technology. So if you could see around me, it's total chaos. But this looks clean. Okay, so that's why I'm sitting down today. But normally I'm with you. I'd much prefer to stand up. Somebody brought up too as well, Mike, use of hands. Frame yourself in the shot as much as you can. All of these things, tend to help make a difference.
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to have fun with that too, and use them. I think there is some interesting stuff of whether it's just like having props around you or whatever. I have some like different things and stuff around here that it's fun if you set up your environment correctly. You can do a lot more interesting things virtually. Ken asked about preferred platforms. Is Zoom the best
I got it.
compared to meetings or GoToMeeting? I think it is right now. They pretty much won that battle, and they continually update it, but they all work. I think if your company has one, I would just use whatever they use. We use Teams a lot, and we've been on GoToWebinar and GoToTraining for stuff before as well. Not bad, but I think Zoom right now is winning, and everybody's used to using it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, look, again, not sponsored or whatever. I'm a big fan of Zoom. I've tried some of the others. The others are getting better. But for my money, Zoom has been great. How many of you, by the way, I'm watching the clock here. We got a minute and a half or so. How many of you, just in the chat box, actually have a physical product or something that you go sell, or a demo facility or a lab or something like that? Does anybody have that circumstance? I got a tool for you if you do, if it's meaningful. Okay, so a number of people are saying yes. Okay, so let me throw this out. If it's software, it's probably not going to help you much. But if it's anything that's physical, okay, especially if you have a lab or something along those lines, there are, and I'll get you the exact name of these guys. This is a gimbal, basically. So you put your iPhone on it, you can walk around and you can run a presentation or a demo, and you can walk and carry this, and it'll keep the shot steady. It'll focus on you. If you sit it down and you move to a different place, it'll eye track with you. We have clients that are getting up close and personal with technical equipment, with gear, and they're showing it's basically as good or better than if they were in the factory or the lab or the demo center, and they're doing it virtually. No PowerPoints involved. No PowerPoints were harmed in the making of those presentations. But it's a really powerful thing to do, is to actually bring your customer with you on a tour, and one of many tools that you can use with this.
Love that. Saw two other good questions, and then we'll let you go today. One was, what should you wear, colors to wear? I think you want to have a contrast between you and the background helps. And then you don't want a bunch of crazy patterns. Sometimes you'll see people with tight stripes and things on TV or other things that interfere. Jesse just gave me the hands like, what? I can't wear my Hawaiian shirt? No, it's all right, Jesse. You're not on camera. You're not presenting. But anything I would say that is professional, like you would wear to show up to a meeting, is great. And then the other one was asking people to turn their cameras on. So Mark, I didn't know if you had a tip for that one, but I would say turn your camera on before people get in the meeting. It encourages them to do it. And then I would just ask them, hey, are you in a place where you can turn your camera on so that I can see you? And just keep it simple like that, and let them say no if they say no.
Yeah. By the way, thank you for everybody. A number of people are checking out. I'm with you, Mike. I think setting the expectations and say, hey, look, if at all possible, if we could be cameras on, that'd be great. And just saying it in that way, it makes a huge difference when you can't see the other people.
Yeah, sometimes a heads up and the invite makes a big deal too, so they know ahead of time, right? Oh, I didn't know we were going to be cameras on for this meeting. Hang on, I need to move my cat and shut the door and stuff, right? So upfront contracts and telling people ahead of time definitely helps. Thanks, gang. We will share the recording today, but at the email you signed up with, and I will stop that now for everybody.